Gender, transgender, there's a lot of talk about that in our world today. And part of the goal of this podcast is to talk to people, not about them. Today, for the very first interview episode, I'm talking with a friend from high school that I haven't seen in person for about 40 years. He? She? Well, that's the question. Welcome to the Hippie Preacher Podcast, Episode 7. No matter where you are in life, if you're a follower or not, want to talk about Jesus? Today's topic, a Jesus and gender conversation. Is it all about choice?
Welcome to the Hippie Preacher Podcast.
Well, I don't know when you're listening to this, if it's good morning or good afternoon or good whatever, but I'm here with a friend. We went to high school together, and I knew Travis in high school, but now we're talking with Tara. And why don't you just introduce yourself?
I'll do that. Yeah, and it's pronounced Tara. There's two ways to pronounce it, and so it's. I don't.
Well, there
get
you
hung
go.
up on
And I should have established this. We have not actually seen each other in person in over 35 years, and have talked more in chat than anything. So I didn't even know that. So
and it's a common thing because so many people use the name Tara, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of thinking of it as Gone with the Wind.
Oh, okay.
So I spell it Tara just because it's easy, and it's basically most of the letters of my first name anyway. You just drop the VIS off of it, basically.
Right. Okay.
And and Jackson, and I don't know what else to say about who I am, but here I am. It has been a long time. We're talking nearly I guess. Well, it's been nearly 40 years.
Yeah, close to 40.
Crazy.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Because soon after high school, I mean, we kind of went different paths. And weren't connected for a long time. And I mean, we've been on social media, I don't know, 10, 15 years, but never anything really close. I would think.
No. Just real, like most social media relationships, just real surface. Just hey, I'm watching you watching me.
Yep. So my elevator pitch introduction of who I am. I mean, I'm a pastor now.
Okay.
I'm an audio professional. That's where I spent most of my secular career.
Awesome.
I'm doing this little hippie preacher blog and podcast. I'm a father. We have 6 kids. So that's kind of my elevator pitch of who I am. So what would your elevator pitch be?
Yeah, my elevator pitch would be, no. And I am still a father of 2 children. I tell people, the dad thing doesn't change.
Okay.
Once a dad, always a dad. You can't. Those things are just part of your life. It's. I am a musician. That's what I do. It's what I've done my whole life. I've been in and out of music in different areas, but I've always been in it in some degree. I did nearly 12 years on staff at a large First Baptist church as on the pastoral staff.
Right.
That'll scare a lot of people really quick. I basically own my own businesses most of my life on the side. I'm one of these people that I've never done. I'm not linear. I'm a very non-linear person, and so, in the same time I owned an insurance agency, I did other things, and I played music, and I did church work, and it just kind of all layers together. I've worked 4 lifetimes in one type situation, but done everything from own restaurants to own an insurance agency to, stand on stage with some pretty good people, and the last 8 years I've spent running the highways with my son and his music career, and writing and recording, and that's just basically where I'm at. I mean, I'm now what you see here, and I hope it doesn't scare people. I mean, it's just who I am, and it's I'm not your typical activist type. If you think of people like me, you think of the 7%ers, is what I call them.
Right.
I'm not a 7%er. I still hold all the same beliefs I held before this. I just look different. And and once people talk to me long enough, they go, "Oh yeah, you really are the same person. you you just packaged a little different."
Right.
But in my heart, it's who I am, and this is more authentic, so to speak.
Well, it's a process to understand from all sides. I mean, you mentioned music. Music has been very important to me as well. We were in a band together in high school. What was
amazing.
it called? Pulse? Was that the?
Yeah, Pulse. I think that's the name we used. Yeah. That was crazy. I still remember one of the songs word for word, but I'm not going to sing it for the podcast.
Yeah, I know that. We've talked about that song, but
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it is. It is hilarious. So, over the past year or so, we've talked in some generalities about some things, and I thought it would be interesting for us to do this podcast and just talk about how this works, because most of the time we talk about people instead of to people, and
Absolutely.
The whole transgender, gender dysphoria thing, especially in what's called the evangelical world. There are so many absolutes cut and dried, and we normally talk about categories and not people.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you mentioned your appearance. So for someone who may be listening and not watching the video of this, what is the name change and what is the appearance difference? How would you explain that?
Well, what I tell people is I said, that you get to a point where it was about 7.5 years ago, I started down the road of what they call medical transitioning, which is generally when people start hormonal changes and surgeries and things like that. I haven't done any external surgeries. Everything on me is happened by hormonal changes. We've altered the hormones in my body. And the thing that people don't understand about that, so if you're trying to think of what I look like, you probably can't imagine the difference. I can show, I have a before and after kind of picture that's really a great illustrator of the change and how much the hormones do. And matter of fact, I've had close friends that I have look at those, and I've had people literally tell me, "That's not you." And I said, "Yeah, it's me," and it's the facial features have softened. Your subcutaneous fat level, just right below the surface, tends to shift all over your body, including your face. So it gives you a more rounded, less rigid. I don't have facial hair like a 56-year-old man might have, and I do have I have features upstairs. I don't know how to say this without
Right.
that Christian part of me just makes it hard for me to say things sometimes. I have to really think about how to phrase things. But physical attributes. There are physical attributes that I have that are 100% real. I know it. And so, so I mean, I look, most people, I'll put it this way, most people don't really pick up on the fact that I was ever Travis if they don't know me.
Right.
Now here's the thing. You'll notice I don't fake a voice. You don't see my hands flying around in the air.
Right.
There's no affectations to anything I do. My goal was to be authentic to who I felt like. This has been I can go back to my memory as far as 6 years old. That's about as far back as I can remember. But
Right.
I dealt with this my whole life. When you and I knew each other, you had no idea what was going on with me. No. My own children lived in the house with me for all those years. And when I told them, it was an entire shock to them. We were Ward and June Cleaver. I mean, we both worked for the church. I was, independent. You're 1099, so you don't really work for. But yeah, we were both part of the church. I mean, our kids were raised there. We were, it was just, we ate meals at the table. It was just very, very, I hate to say white bread. That's just a terrible way to say that. But I think it paints a picture. We were that Norman Rockwell family, and I wanted it that way. And I wrestled with the demons in my own private way, and it eventually ate me up to the point I couldn't do it anymore. But I've always felt this way.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's something that I can't understand, because I have always felt the way that I feel about sexuality, about gender, and it's not something that I chose. I mean, I didn't decide to feel this way. And I mean, and yet there's so much out there that says that everything is a choice. So talk to me about those earliest memories. I mean, what was it like? What were you feeling? What?
I'm glad you asked. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I thought you were pausing. I can go back as far in my memory. I can remember being in my house in Plano, Texas, at the time, probably first grade. That was the first time I really noticed, what the interactions in the school setting. Before that, the boys and girls were here, but it was really about first grade. And I can remember going home at night and praying that I'd wake up the next morning a girl.
Wow.
And that's a terrible feeling. I'm telling you.
So what age was this? What age was this that you were feeling that?
Would have, I guess, have been 6, 7. Yeah, I mean, I prayed every night for that for a long time until I got closer to puberty. Then I figured out that, God wasn't pulling rabbits out of hats for people, so to speak. That wasn't, I know miracles are still possible, but that miracle is probably, once I learned the probability of the miracle happening,
right.
I didn't really count on it at that point. So I had to figure out a new way to cope with it. And
well, speaking of coping, did you have anyone to talk to, anyone to ask, any questions to be answered?
No, nobody, because you couldn't tell anybody.
Right.
I've written about this extensively in a Medium. I have a blog site on Medium.com, and as part of their blogs, and I wrote extensively on that. There's just where we lived. Even, this was the late 70s. By the time I was really hitting hard with, nobody had a clue. It was not a thing. I mean, and living and once I moved back to Paris, it certainly wasn't a thing.
And for those who don't know, that's Paris, Texas, not any other Paris.
Yeah. No, it's Podunk, Paris, Texas. And you know what? It's a really great town. I will never disparage the town. It's really grown in their understanding of people, and it's just not backwards like I thought it would be by now. I thought it would probably slide a little bit, but it's actually full of good people that tend to love each other based on who they are, not what they look like. And that's a pretty big thing for this area. But yeah, there was no reference point. There was no point of reference for what was going on inside of me. I had no idea. I just knew I didn't fit in with the guys. I never wanted to fit. I played football.
Yeah.
I hated every minute of it. But I toughened up because the antidote to how I felt at the time was to push myself into hyper masculinity.
Right.
I played football, I played golf, I ran around on weekends. Because I don't want anything I say to come off as prideful, because it's not. Matter of fact, I've made amends with most of the girls that I was inappropriate with in school. I mean, literally, have reached out to them and called them and asked for forgiveness for my behavior, because I just started. Well, it was a girl that was older than me that got me started, but it was just conquest. I was just and then I got into music because that's where the chicks were. Then I got into weightlifting. I worked for a downtown gym and even helped teach the junior college kids that came down there for weightlifting courses, and that's where I bulked up. That's why I'm a little bit, bigger across the chest, because I did bulk up quite a bit. And then I went from that into very masculine things like hanging out at the golf course every day with all the men and drinking beer and playing golf and just trying to be once I was married and once we had a kid on the way, I came back off the road playing music and tried to settle down and do what I felt like I was supposed to do because I still had no reference at that point. And so I fought it. I'll give you a really brief thing that I think about a lot. I tell people I never equate myself with the Apostle Paul. Never. I mean, that's not who I am. But he struggled his whole life with what the Bible references a thorn in his side.
Yeah, thorn in the flesh.
I don't particularly think that was a literally piece of wood stuck in him somewhere. I think there was something else, whether it was his eyes, his wife. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, nobody does.
It could be anything. But he prayed fervently for that to go away. And God said that my strength will be made known through your weakness. That's a little misquoted, but that's my version of what I remember. He said, my strength will be seen through your weakness. And
it's okay because Paul misquoted the Septuagint a time or two, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But so all of a sudden, that was kind of the cross I started to bear for myself. Mm-hmm. I said, he's just, I started praying just about high school. When I finally figured out it wasn't going to happen, I started praying every night. At that point, I turned my prayer from God make me the girl when I wake up. I want to wake up everything to God, take whatever this is away from me. Get it out of my head. Let me be the man you want me to be. Wow. Whatever that man is, let me do it. And I prayed that prayer every night and every night and every night. And even when I was in my most debased, and I never was bad. I mean, I never was a big alcoholic, drug addict. I kind of stayed above the fray because I am a type A creative. I like to create, but I like a plan. I like to work the plan, and I would pray that prayer every night, and I did that all through my marriage. I taught biblical manhood for 3 years in a ginormous church,
right?
Because I wanted to embrace that so much, and to run from this person.
So, it's difficult for someone like me who knew you in high school. You played bass in our band, and I never considered you effeminate at all.
I covered it up.
Yeah, and to hear that this has been something that you have struggled with, since childhood. I mean, that just doesn't fit the normal paradigm of a middle-aged guy going through transition from how we evangelicals or Christians or those who don't understand how they characterize or stereotype things. And so from that perspective, just through social media, seeing you begin to transition, and we had never even talked about it, but it was pretty obvious.
Yeah,
that this was not exactly the Travis that I played in the band with.
Exactly.
But then again, and you mentioned this, that some of your body movements and everything are still similar. I mean, you still play the bass like you played the bass.
Yeah. No, I still move like a dude on stage. I posted a video today, and if you watch, it's a song we wrote called Bank Fishing. Matter of fact, I started laughing today when I looked at it. I said, oh my gosh, you're doing Gene Simmons moves on stage. And I never tried to emulate anybody, but I look up there and I'm even doing the head bob. And I go, oh my gosh, I've seen them live too many times,
right.
And so, there's no affectation of, I don't run around trying to be flighty. I'm not playing a character. It's different. And that's what makes it, I think that was what makes it tough for people sometimes. Because I don't wear short dresses and high heels. Not because, it's out of, something I'd be afraid to do. I look like a linebacker in a dress. And I don't mind making fun of myself like that because I know my limitations.
Right.
But I also know that I'm being 100% authentic to who I am. I feel better about myself but I've always done this on a breadcrumb basis. I've literally just dropped breadcrumbs all along the way. There was never a day that I just flipped a switch and busted out of the house all made up pretty for the day. I never did that. It was,
Right.
a little change here, a little incremental. And I did it in a way that was very because me, and hopefully maybe we can delve into that day in August of 2016 when it was me and a 9mm in the middle of nowhere, Texas. I was even considering where I was going to shoot myself because I didn't want to leave a mess for my family so they could have a funeral. I was thinking about other people.
Right.
In spite of where I was. I got to a place in life that I hope most people never go to. Even as a therapist, I spent many years as a therapist and you've heard of Celebrate Recovery?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I've created those groups and run those groups.
Yeah.
So even just through everything we've done, you said something really key a minute ago, and this is something I wish more people of faith, especially, because people that aren't of the faith, they generally, it probably doesn't cross their mind as much. You said something really profound. You said, I've always felt like I feel right now. I've always felt like Aubrey. No matter what, that's what I felt like. That is a blessing in my world. I would have given just about anything to not feel. I had a friend who was working on my car July 2021. I was out at his house. I wasn't wearing, I didn't wear makeup. I didn't do anything different. I just had on a pair of old gym shorts and t-shirt, and we were out there, and he was doing something to my car, and I told him, I said, I know you've been looking at me. Ask me the question. And bless his redneck heart, I love him to death. I've known him for about 40 years. And he looked at me, he goes, why'd you want to be a woman? And I said, you just hit it, Dave. I said, I didn't. I said, you're looking at somebody that never wanted to be this. I fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it till it consumed so much of my life and so much of my thought time that it put me in this really weird place. Even through doing all those Celebrate Recovery groups, everything I've done, I never understood hopelessness. Even when I would counsel people with PTSD and suicidal thoughts, I could not wrap my head around suicide. For 47 years, I couldn't wrap my head around suicide. I just couldn't. I was thinking, my gosh, I would just eliminate the problem before I'd eliminate myself. That was always kind of but I could never understand how somebody could get to that low until I got there. And it happened just really, it wasn't sudden. It was a slow burn. I became the angriest human being on the planet. The kids were grown, the kids were married, everything was kind of going. And it was just giving me way too much thinking time. And it just got to the point where I couldn't do what I did because at the time I thought, well, I can't transition. This is who I am. I cannot, because by that time, for your people listening and watching, during all these years, I went back and picked up an undergrad degree in psychology. I picked up a grad degree in psychology. I did post-grad work in psychology for a doctorate. That's what I've done. And so I did that by and large trying to figure out who I was, but I went to one of the biggest Christian schools in Texas, which Laterno is one of the, I highly recommend the school. Now it's expensive, but I got a solid education there. But it just, I can't change because when I do, the moment I do, it's going to explode my entire life.
And did it?
Well, here's the thing. At first it didn't because I had built strong enough family and business and I came out so slow, came out. I hate that. I hate the word transgender and I hate the word came out because to me, I feel like trans is kind of that time when you're moving from one thing to another. I kind of feel like I'm there. I feel like I've always been there. I just feel like I haven't looked like I've been there, if that makes any sense. I don't feel like this is something new that I'm transitioning to. I think I'm making my external match how I felt in here. When you and I were recording music, I felt like this. Now the odd thing is most people equate this with being gay.
Yeah.
Well, technically, I guess I am gay, but I'm not gay in the way they think. My sexual attraction and gender identity they're two different things. I tell people all the time, gender is who you are. Sex is who you love, who you are attracted to. I've always been attracted to females. I've never looked at a guy in my life. This will really confuse people now, but I've never looked at a guy in my life and thought, man, he looks good. Matter of fact, I don't even like to be hugged by men.
I mean, that part I can understand,
In a church setting, I don't, when everybody wants to come up and do the prayer, get around you and put hands on you, I'm just like, that always gave me the willies. And still does. And then I've got this Spanish friend that hugs and kisses on both cheeks, and that freaks me out every time we meet. I just hate that. But having said that, I am still very attracted to females. So that kind of makes me quite the anomaly. But I also, like I say, it's not, some people do this and it becomes an activism thing. I did it to survive.
Okay, unpack that for me a little bit. You did it to survive.
Because I literally got to the point where I didn't know if I let it all, if I tell everybody and I come out, it's going to blow my marriage up. But if I don't, it's going to absolutely kill me. I would become such an incensed, angry. When I left the church was because I was in a deacons meeting one night, and these two deacons were giving the pastor just pure grief. And I came out of my chair and went at him. I was that angry. Because it was consuming every thought I had at that point. And so it was the same thing. I couldn't come out and be me, but I couldn't stay like I was. And so it left me with this real, there's no gray area. I could not remain like this because it was destroying the people around me. My kids had I'd almost become a caricature of who they knew. My spouse was walking on eggshells. I had no idea because they were afraid I might explode at any moment. And it wasn't like it was a conscious decision and I was really monitoring my own behavior. I'd just become that person. And so you had these two competing thoughts that were just killing me. And I said, you know what? The only solution I can think of is to line everything up, make sure everybody's taken care of. Of course, I'm a prolific writer, so I write better than I talk, by a long shot. And I had long, drawn-out letters to everybody. I had all my financials in order, had everything on my desk at home. And then when I left my office I went out in the middle of nowhere where I knew there was no cell coverage. I literally went to a part of this neighboring county where I'd been 1,000 times, and there's about a 10-mile stretch. There was no cell phone coverage. I mean, if you broke down, you'd have to walk 5 miles probably. And so I went out there and I parked. I threw my cell phone in that seat next to me. I chambered my SIG P250. It's a 9mm gun. I aimed it at my chest, not at my head. And I can't tell you if it was 5 minutes. I can't tell you if it was 30 minutes. I can't tell you if it was 1 second. I don't know how long I sat there, but I sat there a while, tears. And I thought the only answer that I came up with, and this is with being in church my entire life, but I knew I couldn't tell anybody in church what was going on with me. Okay. Nobody would.
That is so sad, but it's true.
It is sad. It is because, I could, if I tell the pastor this is going on, all of a sudden I become, instead of a hospital for those that are wounded, we want to be a showcase for the trophy. We don't. I don't know. My analogies are really bad right now, but the church should be a place that welcomes the people that are struggling and tries to. And I've always believed that you should walk alongside somebody until you share. God does the work. I can't save somebody.
Right.
You can't save somebody.
No.
You can share the word with them, and God can do the work. But we've got to walk alongside people to help them. God, it's the love thing, man. Love one another, and it's so. Now that's getting down the road. But anyway, so I sat there, and as I was sitting there, I had thrown my phone in the passenger seat, no cell service. And I was sitting at that gun aimed at my chest, had the car off, windows down, and all of a sudden, my cell phone rang. Cell phone with no service rang. And it was my wife. And she said, "Hey, where you at?" And of course, at that point, I didn't want to say, "Well, I'm sitting out here with a gun to my chest. What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm out here looking at a house I'm going to insure out in such and such county, and I'll be home shortly. I just need to inspect it before I tell them I can do it." And that was nothing out of nothing out of the ordinary for me. And it was after 5. Normally, we've already talked on the phone by then, so it was kind of a red flag to her that she hadn't heard from me. And she said, "Well, do you know where something is?" And till this day, I can't tell you what she asked me about. All I can tell you is she asked me a question. And I was so angry when that phone rang because it messed up my flow.
You're playing.
It interrupted my day. Mm-hmm. That's how angry I'd become, that I was mad because the phone rang while I had a gun chambered. I mean, all I had to do was touch that trigger. It would have been over with in a split second. And that phone rang. And so I laid the gun down and I answered the phone. And then I came home. I sat there and cried for probably an hour, but then I went on home. And I went immediately to my office, grabbed everything on my desk that was in manila folders, put it all up. And then I went and talked. And I didn't say a word to her that night. And then the next night, I was in the bathroom, the master bath, and I sat up on the counter and I told her, I said, "Come here." I had her come sit up on the counter and we talked. Her recollection's probably way better at this than mine. But we probably talked from 4:30 to about 1 a.m. And literally sat there on that counter in the bathroom and just talked. And she knew it. She's known this, and I'm not throwing her under the bus. She'll tell you that she knew that there was something different before we got married. Right. But like we said earlier in the thing, we had no frame of reference. I didn't know what transgender was. I didn't, and if you go back to when I was 18, 19, 20, when we met and all that, I had no idea what it was. What I thought was going on was it was some kind of clothing fetish. It was just something we did that had a sexual component. And that's how it kind of played out through the whole marriage. It was never a constant. It was, it ebbed and flowed. There'd be some time periods where it would be a kind of a thing and then it would go away. And then I would keep shoving it and throwing stuff away and then, acquiring things.
Let me play devil's advocate here, because I can imagine that there are some who would hear that and say, "Oh, well, see, it's just a sexual thing. It's just a perversion." So how would you respond to that?
Oh, well, what's interesting is it we almost became non-sexual toward the end of the marriage anyway, and it was still a thing. And for me today, this is one of the things that people don't understand. When you do get to the place I'm at, the clothing bears there's no sexual component to it anymore. Once this became who I was, it literally evaporated. Evaporated.
That's not something that I can totally process or understand, but I can appreciate where you're coming from. And this whole thing is something that I'm learning to deal with, and I have input from several sides telling me what I should say and what I should do. And
I can only imagine.
I'm going, this is my friend.
Yeah.
So first, I want to understand, and what I want to understand more than, I thank you so much for being so open and sharing this struggle that you have, endured this whole time. But let's talk about Jesus and both where you are now and in this journey. I mean, how does Jesus fit into all of this for you?
Well, what's interesting is that I've never lost my desire to be in the Word. I've never lost my desire to study. I've never lost my desire to help. I mean, there's even a church here in town, I guess probably the biggest one in town, that even has welcomed me for a period of time to I was even doing the front of house sound stuff for them for a while. And obviously they didn't want me on stage because I was whatever, but, and I was even in small group studies, with the co-ed groups. I didn't go to all either. It was, it was kind of one for creatives. It was, and so my thing is I still feel people can find me real easy if they go to Google and type in Tara Jackson. One of the first things that pops up is an interview I did with a magazine.
I haven't seen that.
No, and most people hadn't, because I don't. Once again, on Twitter, here's how I do my world. This is my world, real in a nutshell, really quick. I don't lead with what I am. I lead with who I am. And I let people decide if they like me for who I am and not what I am. I don't not talk about it, but I don't talk about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I sit with a group of people at this cigar lounge downtown. It's really a really neat place, and I'll go down there and sit with, couples and men and just everybody. Gender never plays a role in what we do and how we talk. They've gotten to know who I am as a person, and nearly all of them, without an exception, that hang out down there know what's going on, and yet they're comfortable because I don't. And I tell them, and it goes back to that article, because I talk about in that article that if my memory serves me right, is that I've always kind of led with, loving people like Jesus loves people.
Right.
I don't hate anybody. I've never hated anybody. You give me a reason not to like you, I'm not going to like you, and I'm going to distance myself from you if it's bad enough. But I've always put others first. I'm always worried about their comfort level, even till this day when they're around. I mean, I won't dress certain ways just because, not because I don't want to or because I don't think it'll look right. I just don't, because I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable.
Right.
I put others first, and I love people. And that's kind of my relationship with Jesus, is the love. I share, and I've done this. I did this through the music years, and even with Kevin on the road. The people would say, when we would go into places and play and do things, the venue management, the owners, everybody, they would comment on, man, you guys came in professional. You set up, nobody was high, nobody was drunk. And I mean, this is, they're expecting everything that you hear. We're respectful of people. We shared love with people. I wanted them to see Jesus even when I couldn't tell them who he was. And so most people that know me now that didn't know me like you knew me, they'll all say without exception, they love who I am. And that's what drew them to me, was that it's apparent that I actually care about them as human beings, not just, I'm not out looking for friends.
Right.
People, and God puts people in my life all the time. You would be amazed at how many people I have literally just stumbled across that are dealing with this in family members. And there I am to give them a more balanced approach.
Right.
I don't.
Well, and that's kind of my hope today, is to, I mean, not there was no agenda. And I know that your time is running short.
Yeah.
But just to show some kind of balance, because I mean, I say this a lot. You can't help or love someone or reach someone that you're throwing stones at, and it It seems like that the church in general, especially the Western church, is in this throw stones first mode, and it is no compromise of my faith or my standards to love you where you are, as
Yeah.
you are, and there are things that I'm processing about this, and I'm sure that there's things that we don't agree with, but you are my friend. I mean, in a very real sense, you are my neighbor, as Jesus said that we are to love our neighbor, and it makes me think of all of the other neighbors that I don't know as well, that I haven't taken the time to listen to or try to understand because I didn't have a history with them. In fact,
Sure.
just this last weekend, I crossed paths with someone in Walmart, and that is evidently transitioning. And
Oh, wow.
I was like, how could I even begin a conversation to love my neighbor instead of trying to convince them that I'm right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. 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 And that's the one thing I appreciate about you, because in spite of all the things that it took me 47 years to reach this understanding. I don't expect anybody to do it in 30 minutes, 6 years, five, it's hard. And the thing, if I could leave you with, I'm not leaving exactly right this second, but if I could leave people with one thing, it would be this. If you interact with, like the person you ran into, if you interact with them like they're a human being,
Yeah.
like they're just somebody made in the image of God, they're just, there's a lot that it's like you said really well, the other day, we live in a fallen world. When sin entered the world, it created a fallen world. We have babies born with birth defects every swinging day.
Yeah.
And people say, God didn't make mistakes. I said, you're right, he didn't. My life looks different from yours, and I don't always follow the right path, but I am on a journey, and I'm trying to do the right thing. It's different than somebody being on this journey and just trying to do everything that's not right. That person, I'm going to love them and I'm going to talk to them, but that's a whole different situation from where I'm at. I try to tell people, you'll treat people as human beings, no matter what the difference is.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference in the world. The fact that you and I can have a conversation, even though we've known each other for 40 years, but that we can sit here and talk, knowing that I absolutely know you're sitting there going, I have no idea how you could.
Well, I mean,
feel that way.
It's so foreign to me. I mean, it would be like me trying to understand what it would like to be Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Well,
I can't comprehend it from my perspective.
well,
But that
what's
doesn't mean that
interesting-
my perspective is the only perspective.
Well, and what's interesting is when you said those words earlier about that you've always felt like a guy,
Exactly.
you've always felt like a dude. I have no idea what that's like.
Right.
I have zero idea what that feels like, because I've always felt this way. I just always looked the other way. And to have an opportunity to talk things out like this, I think is probably one of the best things we can do as people, is talk to each other, not at each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, we didn't have an agenda here, and I don't
have
think that
zero
this
agenda.
will probably be the last conversation. In fact, this is the longest conversation that you and I have had in about 40 years. I mean,
know.
we've chatted a little bit here and there, a phone call or two, but nothing at this length. And so I'm honored. I thank you so much for taking the time to not even know what we were going to talk about or anything like that. So I guess to wrap up, my question to you as a Jesus follower is, how can I really love you as my neighbor?
Yeah, I think it goes with what I was closing with a minute ago. To love me is to treat me as a human being made in the image of God. Francis Schaeffer is probably one of my biggest influences in life. Most people probably wouldn't pick that up from me. But that man was probably one of the last great theologians of our lifetime at this point. He was very, very, very good. And what he said is, he said, we've got to love people because they are made in the image of God. And if you treat me as somebody that's made in the image of God and not as somebody lesser than, the ground is level at the foot of the cross type situation.
Right.
And you love me, it's amazing when you treat somebody like that, all of a sudden how your countenance changes towards them as well as theirs towards you. And that's where I think healing begins, is when I'll talk to anybody that wants to talk, but treat me as human, because the thing is I still love Jesus in spite of how I behave. And man, I go to bed a lot of nights and think, you have just not been a very good example today.
Well, I've prayed for you a lot.
You've fallen short. Because
I follow you on Twitter, and so
Yeah. And so my deal is that I am so glad that we did. I think it was divine that we met again, after all those years, and I think it was divine that we kind of got somewhat intertwined through social media, and I think there is a real God aspect to the whole conversation, and I would love to continue it because I think it can bring healing to a lot of people. But if love me as a human being made in the image of God, that's all I ever asked for. I tell people they don't have to agree with it. Heck, I didn't agree with it for 47 years.
Right.
I fought it like the plague. I mean, the last thing I wanted to do, David's words to me will never, in my response to him, that'll always play in my head. Why'd you want to be a woman? I said, dude, I didn't. It's who I am.
Wow. Well, thank you again, my friend.
I appreciate you.
And
that's a lot to digest. You're a good man.
This won't be the last conversation. And
I hope not.
I love you for not just for who you are, but if I believe what I say I believe, then those who do believe are being conformed into the image of Jesus. And so that is my hope. That is the only desire that I have for you is the same desire that I have for myself, which is, how do we follow Jesus together? How do we love like Jesus? How do we live like Jesus and make a real difference in this world? So thank you so much. I'll post some links and stuff in the show notes so that people can find you. And is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah. Yeah, just tell them to always find me with a grain of salt. That I am an entertainer, and part of my life is spent building a brand in the entertainment world, and it's just not always easy. And I am going to behave a little more because I am feeling a little more convicted about a little bit of that. I don't know. Some of those people, anyway. I try to help others, and that's my way of following Jesus is that, and then I'll stop because I know you got to go, but I want to be an example that when people read what I write and hear what I actually say, that they're going, that person really does care. They really do care about me, and that's I'm not going to stop trying to be like Jesus just because I became whatever this is. I'm just a human being like everybody else.
Well, I appreciate you putting up with this old hippie who doesn't know whether to.
I appreciate you.
Sometimes call you dude or, and I say man all the time, but we're working through this, and I wish more people would. I wish more people would just have the conversation. So, well, it looks like the internet's finished with us today too, because you're kind of glitching here. But thank you, and God bless you, and we'll do this again.
Make peace.